see why. It gives you a chance to express your own feelings or point of view in a way that's most likely to be heard by the other person and strengthen the trust between you. And so let's just start with a little review. So last session was empathy part 2, where we went a little bit deeper and hopefully you had practice applying empathy in multiple times, and that's the point that I'd like to get across. Is it's not just one statement, okay, check empathy, and now I'm moving on to something else. Usually it, the reason why the image is like it is because in the middle, the center circle, really the core of your relationship, involves moving through both of these skills. I teach them in order so that you really are able to master one at a time, but what you'll find is you may be right there and listening to a child and coming to a deeper understanding, but then you have something to say. And then it flips back to empathy, and then you might have something else to say. So that's kind of how these first 2 skills really work. And then you might have to come out of that core communication piece to maybe problem solve or set a limit or discuss maybe what their goals might be. So we're just starting at the core today. It requires letting go of your agenda, which is really difficult, but I think in the back of your mind, as you're learning these skills, remember, if there's a problem to be solved or a goal, we have other skills for it. So the most effective way to really help kids and accomplish what we want is in the beginning, putting that agenda aside. It sometimes gets in the way of open communication. So an agenda might be something like what? Like we were talking a little bit about that. Let's say your child or student comes home and says, I can't believe it, I forgot my homework again. What might your agenda be? What you want?
How to get them instead of bringing them in.
Exactly. So usually, she said how to get them to bring it home next time. For most of us, especially teachers and parents, our agenda is to help fix the problem. I want to fix it and I want to teach them. And that's great. But if you start with these steps, the likelihood of really being able to come up with an effective plan is going to be a lot greater. So you let go of your agenda. Knowing when to postpone. So I had a section that was before that said, like, it didn't work. And I'll hear sometimes people come back and say, it didn't work. And when I probe further, I understand that maybe they were trying to use empathy when the child just wasn't interested or engaged. One of the examples I use is like when 2 kids are fighting over a toy, a truck, and you could say something like, you both want the same toy, or, he had it first. It's not fair. But if they're so focused on that truck, they're not hearing anything you have to say. So you might have to jump to another skill and take the truck away. So knowing when to postpone is something that we'll be talking about throughout. That you refrain from asking too many questions. The questions are fine. It's just remembering that the empathy comes after you get the response to the questions. And that your ability to vary your response just deepens your ability to connect with and bring not only the child but yourself to a deeper level of understanding. And again, remembering that the key to managing emotions and behaviors and fixing problems is understanding yourself. So varying your response. So the first level that people often will say when they're practicing, and this is normal, is you're really sad, you're really frustrated. It's kind of that feeling level is level 1. But as you get more skills, varying your response might include something like just describing what you see, describing their behavior. And that can sometimes elicit a deeper level of understanding on both of your parts. So you're really sad. It could be, it's upsetting when your friend told you they wanted to play with you and they're ignoring you now. You're just describing. So we had a couple of assignments. It was the Brene Brown book and the green chapter which talked a lot about Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Let's start with the Brene Brown. Any comments or questions or important takeaways that you all have from the Brene Brown section? You're starting to like it, I'm so
Yeah.
glad.
Yes.
So what did you like about it, this
I
session?
don't know, it was talking about like worthiness and sense of belonging. I don't know, it caught my eye, I guess.
Mhm.
And I related it to all personal stuff, so.
I think what I took away from her book sometimes is there are universal things we all feel and needs, and it creates a structure around it that, for me, when I'm struggling myself, or I'm seeing my children struggle, what I often go to is, there's shame probably in the back of that, and that feeling that, I've done something wrong, I didn't do a good enough job, and I often see the kids who act out the most, that's usually right underneath it. And so when you pull the skills in, learning to speak to that can often be very powerful to take that. Yes?
I really liked that she mentioned about like the food thing, like how she, we all know Weight Watchers, we all know,
Yeah.
and we get all wrapped up in this, but there's two things to that I really liked. One is it's kind of like, when do you finally just feel okay with who you are and not spend your whole life trying to change? And the next thing is, when you are doing that, your children are watching you.
That's so powerful.
I thought, I can't keep saying I'm not eating that. I mean, not that I'm not, but like my kids, my two daughters.
Yeah.
And so you're really causing that to carry on.
The
when you're not
messages
accepting
you
yourself.
say to yourself, they start saying to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you're not accepting yourself, and so they're not going to accept. How can you expect them to accept themselves when you're not accepting your own self?
That's like, it's never enough, I'm never good enough,
Yeah.
is the message that we say to ourselves.
And we
a lot.
send it.
Uh-huh. Anybody else?
Yes.
Brene Brown, yes.
I also like this from Brown about love and belonging.
Oh, that's what she is,
That
yeah.
it's, they're talking about it like day by day, I love you, but what does it really
What
mean?
does it really mean?
What does it really mean?
That might be my favorite thing I love. She's a qualitative researcher, so she takes these concepts that we talk about a lot, like connection and resilience and love and belonging, and she defines them. And to me, it deepens my understanding of what it feels like to feel loved and belong and to feel connected. How about Ross Greene's book? So this chapter can be a little confusing. He talks about the 3 plans that we often think of when you're dealing with a child who's challenging. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? Yes.
Excuse me. I haven't gotten to chapter 3 yet,
Uh-huh.
but I'm almost done with chapter 2,
Mhm.
and I'm absolutely loving this book.
Oh, good.
And I feel like it's come into my life at a time where I really need it, and there is a child who really needs this too. And it's allowed me to talk to the child in a different way, and it's allowed me to talk to the mom in a different way. And it's only just the beginning of the book. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to be able to have time to sit and read it. I'm trying to make time, but
I'm so glad.
but I'm very grateful that you've chosen this book.
Thank you. Thank you. I remember reading it myself, like, I think I was saying to you all, I must have read the thing like 7 times. Because there's just so much in there. I'm like, yes, exactly. And it's concrete. So I love how he gives the words and the real shift in understanding why the kids act out, which makes me less angry. Every time I'm in a power struggle with one of my kids,
I like how it shifts though from Zoe's story to like her and
oh, that's a really good
Yeah.
point.
it
So,
goes back and forth, like relating to what she's talking about,
Yeah.
or then relating to what, like whatever is going on
the
in the
parent,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
that there's so many people involved, and the parent actually has the same lagging skills that the kid does, and the teacher does, and, yeah.
Don't you just hate the principal?
Well, I was just gonna say, I wrote actually in the,
something at the
So passionate.
I actually wrote in the corner, why does everyone seem so clueless?
Yeah.
It was so frustrating, I mean, I was frustrated.
And you see it,
They put the
You
blame
see
on the
it
child and not themselves.
always, when there's problems like that. I used to go to a lot of schools in Baltimore City in an interface, usually with the principal in the office. And you see so much in that office, in the principal's office, between, usually the kids there are the ones who are in trouble. And the most functioning schools are the ones where, they've embraced the kid. They have adopted that idea that they're not just trying to be difficult, and nor are the parents and the teachers. And so I love the book for that reason.
It fits right in with Rothenbrenner's micro, macro
Yes,
ecology
yes.
about, sorry, just finished the first part of my 90 hours, so it's still there.
It's like a bullseye, right? Like the child, and then the peers, and then the parents, and then the teachers, and then
Yeah,
larger
something like
community,
the
and they
larger
all-
community at whole, and how everything affects a child. And in today's society, most parents are working, and the kids don't have the family unit, and Rothenbrenner and his people who follow his theory say the schools need to pick it up. And in the public school, and schools that are considered successful is that the administrator works with the teachers in that, and then the teachers work with the kids, and everybody's working together.
Takes a village.
It takes a village.
Okay. So today's skill is personal message, and just like with the empathy first session, we're gonna go over what it is, how it's different from other ways of sharing what really matters to you, why they're important. So why are we even doing this in the first place? And again, part of that is remembering sometimes intrinsically, why are we doing this if we're not directly fixing the problem right yet? What are the benefits? How does it work? So we're going to show you the steps, and then we'll do some checks for understanding. And then the skills practice, where we'll build on the ones that we had those characters before with your empathy statements, and we'll add the personal messages. So let's get started. So a personal message is a skill for authentically communicating how you feel or what you need in a manner that's respectful and non-judgmental. It's hard when you're angry to be respectful and non-judgmental. So I'm going to read a few examples of two adults, one that is using a personal message to communicate how they feel, and the other is what I just classify as a more typical response to the same child behavior. So starting with this first one, so adult X versus adult Y. So imagine that in your classroom you have a group of kids or one particular child who you constantly have to remind multiple times to put away their things. And today, they put them away without your having to ask. So adult X is you're so responsible. Adult Y is you clean the table without my having to remind you. You could just stop there. I appreciate your help. I don't mean to imply that a personal message is lengthier in words. Obviously, that's a personal message. So imagine in your class that you're talking with another student or trying to help them, and another student is interrupting you and talking to you and asking you for help. So adult X is you're being disrespectful. Adult Y is you're asking me questions and I'm speaking with Sarah. I'm frustrated because I can't hear her. So you ask one of your students who took the such and such's lunch, or who, and they deny it, but then you found out that they actually were the ones who did it. So adult X is you're dishonest, or even you're being dishonest, versus it's hard for me to trust you when your words don't match what you do. So the opposite of this is the kids that don't put the supplies away for the 100th time. Adult X is you never put your supplies away like I asked. Versus adult Y, I feel ignored. I asked you to put your supplies away and they're still on the table. So what do you notice in general about this side?
General.
Adult X. It's general, and what
It's
do you?
more accusatory.
Adult Y is very specific, as opposed to like, adult X is more general, it's more placing a general label.
Yes, it's a, making an evaluation. What else?
I said adult X is being accusatory. You're irresponsible, you're dishonest, you're disrespectful.
Yes.
A lot of
What
name
else?
calling, there's
Right.
a lot of name calling.
Yeah, labeling,
Picking
name
on
calling,
them.
evaluating. If you're making a judgment, adult X is making a judgment.
It's like the whole
Very
person
true.
issue rather than the one specific issue.
It's whole person focused as opposed to behavior focused.
Mm-hmm.
And general as opposed to specific. And if you're, if somebody says, you're so responsible, or, you're so responsible, you're being disrespectful, you're dishonest, if you talk about some of the negatives, right? You can see it can be positive too. Usually when somebody says something like that, a natural human instinct again is to resist being controlled. It's more likely to elicit defensiveness. As opposed to, what do you notice on why? There's one thing that I try to pull out in every one of these. It's, yes,
Which you're stating how you feel
yes.
and telling the person how you're making you feel.
As opposed to, so it's like the I statements is kind of,
Instead of pointing the finger.
it's like the opposite. Empathy is you're feeling. Personal messages is I. And why. And so there's explaining how you feel and then describing the behavior specifically. So look at all these. You clean the table without my having to remind you. Very specific. You're asking me questions and I'm speaking with Sarah. There's no judgment, you're just describing. This is the feeling. It's hard for me to trust you when your words don't match what you do. That's the description. I asked you to put your supplies away and they're still on the table. I love doing this with my kids. I asked you to put your laundry in the laundry basket and it's still on the floor. And you don't even, I'm not saying anything negative, I'm just moving close and say it. And it's more powerful than, how many times have I told you to put your clothes in the laundry basket? So, here's a short video by Brene Brown. So one of the things that personal messages, when you're dealing with more challenging situations, it requires you to be vulnerable, which sometimes teachers, a lot of times teachers and therapists are trained, don't share your own feelings because it's not professional. There's a way to do it that is professional and it relates to your role as a teacher, but it requires one to be vulnerable. But the power is in the vulnerability. So I was just going to show you a short clip by Brene Brown.
What does it mean then to dare greatly?
To me, it means the courage to be vulnerable. It means to show up and be seen, to ask for what you need, to talk about how you're feeling, to have the hard conversations. When we asked people in the research, what is vulnerability to you? And let me tell you, I was raised that vulnerability is weakness, right? Most people. Yeah, like that was.
Most people think vulnerability is weakness.
Right.
And you know what? After reading Dare Greatly, what I realized, and the Gifts of Imperfection, what I realized, first of all, is I live in the space of vulnerability. And that is what has made me so successful, is my vulnerability with the audience. And I think that vulnerability is sort of the cornerstone of confidence. I think it's the cornerstone because
I believe that.
Because unless you can allow yourself to take the risk, to be open, to live as a wholehearted person, when you can do that, you recognize that you're really just like everybody else. And that gives you the confidence to be yourself, which is all you really need in life, is to be more of yourself.
And I do believe, coming from vulnerability is weakness, when we ask people what is vulnerability, and they said things to us like, the first date after my divorce, trying to get pregnant after my third miscarriage, sitting with my wife who has stage 4 breast cancer, making plans for our young children. The biggest examples that came up from the research was picking up the phone and making a call to someone who's just had a great loss.
Oh, yes.
And I thought about that in my own life. And, there's the phone. I walk up to it and I'm like, what am I going to say?
What am I going to say? That's what everybody fears.
It's going to make it better.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can say except I'm here, I'm hurting with you, you're not alone. But I'll call in an hour. And And I come back an hour, I'm like, oh man, it's dinner time. I'm gonna make a casserole, I'm gonna make an
We've all done
expensive
that.
casserole.
We've all done that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what happens when an hour turns into a day, turns into a week, and then it's a month later, and you run into that friend at the grocery store?
But you know what,
They
yeah,
don't call.
just to show up, that's all people want, it's
That's
just, is for you to show up and say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here.
I can't fix this,
Yeah.
but I'll walk through the pain with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then what is the feeling that we get when we make the call and we hang up? To me, that feeling is when I'm aligned with my values. Courage is my value.
Absolutely.
And you can't get to courage without walking through vulnerability, period.
So they really, a personal message doesn't have to be, sharing your vulnerability per se. It can be sharing what you're proud about, but it does require a level of vulnerability so that you're real. And sometimes it's hard for teachers to want to share that, especially if they're with a student who's really challenging. And so the fear being like, oh, they're gonna see me as weak and they're gonna eat me alive. But more often than not, it's actually the opposite. Because the kids who are acting out the most are the ones who feel the most powerless. So sometimes, like with my own kids, when I finally can say something like, I feel helpless. I don't know how to help right now. Because when they're resisting me, or instead of coming in with a consequence, sometimes I'll just say, I don't know what to do to get you to X, Y, Z. I need your help. And sometimes that's all it takes is just asking for help. So let's talk for a moment about why they're important. It builds mutual respect. So being able to have courage and share that you're excited, that you feel close, that you really appreciate something, or that you're hurt, it builds respect because they see you as a human being who respects themselves enough to share things that are hard. It fosters social awareness. That is one of the main, most powerful things, is that there's so many programs out there that trying to teach kids how other people feel, as though you can teach them to be empathic. You learn empathy by first experiencing it from another person, and then by seeing someone else share authentically how they feel. That is how you build a child's awareness of, and their ability to read social situations at a really young age, because your actions match what you say. Strengthens resilience, so it strengthens your own resilience, and models constructive self-expression. So many things that are really valuable. And when you communicate how you feel before you communicate necessarily what you want or what you think they should do or your lesson. Because kids need to hear how you feel in order to understand you and others and keep their behaviors and bounds in check. In quality relationships, all individuals must be able to share their authentic feelings, set boundaries, and hold each other accountable. So as part of a personal message could be setting a boundary as well, and holding someone accountable. So it's like saying, no, I deserve this for myself. I'm gonna ask for it. So when I give you more examples, I think it'll be less fuzzy for you. So this is another short clip, pardon all the Oprah videos, but sharing your real feelings is necessary for building quality relationships, especially in couples relationships and adult relationships. Truly sharing, I mean, what happens when you don't share if you're upset or dissatisfied is resentment builds, and that's the biggest, most toxic thing that interferes with closeness. So in this video, Brene Brown is talking about the difference between shame and guilt. And I love how Larry Ziffer says, like, in the Jewish community, guilt is a renewable source of energy. Because but what I think really what people are talking about, oftentimes they confuse shame and guilt. So I'll play this video for you. In other words, like sharing your own insecurities is quite
I
powerful.
know awareness is huge for everything, but how do you, if you don't even know that you're carrying the shame, which I know, there's gonna be such a huge reaction to you being here, because people are gonna hear this and know that you're talking exactly to them and about them. How do you unpack it?
Well, I think one of the biggest unpacking pieces is to get clear about the difference between shame and guilt.
Really?
And And the difference between shame and guilt is the difference between I am bad and I did something bad. So let me give you an example. I drink too much on Thursday night. I'm so hungover Friday that I get to work, I miss a meeting, and my self-talk is, God, I'm an idiot. I'm such a loser. Shame. I'm an idiot. I'm a loser. Same scenario, I get to work, but my self-talk is, that was a really stupid thing to do. I wasn't thinking. So the focus on self versus the focus on behavior. Is this linguistics? Is this a pet peeve? What's the deal? This is serious. We measure shame and guilt in people by how they talk to themselves. What are the messages? How do they speak to themselves? Shame, this is gonna freak you out.
Okay.
Highly correlated with addiction, depression, eating disorders, violence, bullying, and aggression. Guilt, inversely correlated with those. People who are able to really change the self-talk and believe it have far better outcomes on all those measures. The pushback is, I don't know the difference between shame and guilt. The difference between shame and guilt is, let me ask you something. If you hurt my feelings, would you be willing to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake?
I'm so sorry.
I made a mistake,
I
right?
made a mistake.
That's shame, I'm sorry, I am a mistake.
I always do that. I'm so stupid. I'm so
Right.
dumb.
I'm such an idiot.
Nothing
I'm
ever
so-
works. Da 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 da.
I'm a
That thing.
crapping on,
Yeah.
fat,
That's
ugly.
shame. That's shame.
That's shame. We have to get really clear, and so when something shaming happens for me, for example, what I try to do is I try to do everything that's counterintuitive, because this is what I learned. Men and women with high levels of resilience to shame share very specific things in common. The first thing I try to do, which is so hard, talk to myself like I would talk to Ellen or Charlie, my kids. So the first thing I try to do is say, you made a mistake, you're human,
Yeah.
you're okay,
You're okay.
I love you,
Yeah.
we're gonna get through this.
Yeah.
The big pieces, I mean, this is the hard one, you gotta reach out and tell the story. You've got to speak your shame.
Yeah.
So it seems so different. I mean, like, so I'm kind of pulling a couple of concepts in here with a personal message, but the essence of a personal message is like applying empathy to yourself. And empathy is awareness and acceptance, and it's non-judgmental. So that's why I use the Brene Brown book in here, because I believe that our ability to be empathic to others is directly related to our ability to be empathic with, understand, and accept ourselves. And what her point is, the only way you can combat that is by sharing that when you're feeling that with somebody else authentically. So personal message can be just sharing simple things like, you know, I feel ignored when you don't put the dishes away. That's on a one level. But on a deeper, more intimate level, not with your students necessarily, but maybe with your partner or with your close family members, is being able to share at a deeper level what you want or what you need. And it starts with being aware of that, but then having the courage to say it. So it's a powerful skill that starts at a more kind of day-to-day level with just sharing things with students, and you're not going to tell your students about, you know, your problems in your life, obviously, but as they relate to their behavior. But then on a deeper level, in your close relationships, they're also really powerful. So, as I
Do you
said,
think it would be helpful with parents? Like, we all deal with parents a lot.
absolutely, and all of this is in the graduate course I teach, same course. What we do between the sessions is you pick a challenging adult and a challenging student, and then you apply the skills. And with the adults, especially with the parents, I think the key to really helping a child is connecting with their parents and being non-judgmental, so you can actually connect and have like a partner in raising this child. So it's so helpful with the parents, the empathy and the personal message. So I've included a few of them in some of your checks for understanding, but I'm open to hearing some of your examples, and I can help you pull out what you really want. And the thing with the personal message, you don't share everything. You almost pick the one, just like the empathy, that they'll be able to feel not attacked, and they'll be able to receive. So it's a little bit of self-censoring too. You're not going to say, well, I'm really disappointed that, you know, she's late to school again. So yeah.
My daughter, who has a learning challenge, always says, I'm stupid about herself all the time. And I said to her one day, she's very much into the world being fair and equal, and she defends every child anywhere. If someone ever says anything mean to them, she's the one there who's helping them. And I said to her one day, finally occurred to me, after years of finding ways to get around this, I said to her, you are doing to yourself what you don't like happening to other people. So you're calling yourself,
That's so powerful.
you know, stupid. And what happens if someone would have said that to somebody? What would you say?
That was the way that spoke
And
to her.
it finally
Yeah, isn't that
connected.
interesting?
And every time she starts to say it, I say, you're doing it again. And I think finally,
Yeah.
that self-talk piece
Yes.
she's tuned into
I
it.
love that. My son does that. He'd be like, I'm so stupid. I'm like, oh.
It's a horrible thing as a parent to hear a child say that.
It
It's like the
is.
worst.
It is. And what do we typically do? No,
You're not.
and
Yeah.
Doesn't sink in.
No.
The empathy is the hardest to give when they're saying those things. It's
Yeah.
the way they feel. But the personal message is essential when you're dealing with something like that.
It
too.
really did make a difference. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's a great one. So there are 3 steps, just like empathy. First, listen to yourself with compassion. I find it works backwards for me sometimes. Sometimes when I share and I talk, I learn about myself through talking in relationships and sharing my own, talking it out. But listen to yourself. Identify your own feelings and thoughts. So just like empathy, sometimes this is like hindsight. It didn't go well. What was I really afraid of? So the same 5 questions you can ask to step into the child's shoes, you can actually ask of yourself. And then communicate that back. So, the communication part, there's 2 components that you want to include, you don't necessarily need both. But the one is a description of the situation or behavior in neutral terms, so you're not evaluating it. I find that really powerful when it almost helps validate how I feel when I can describe the behavior. I asked that you call me when you got to your friend's house, and I never received a call. And then I can say how that made me feel, what I want. And then it's an expression of how you feel and why. And with all of this, so many of the examples I use are problem focused, but you use it to communicate positive things as much as you can. So the phrases to get started, just like the empathy, are, so remember the 5 questions were like, if you were this child, what would you be feeling? What would you be thinking? What might you be wishing? It's the same thing, and they can be turned around into phrases to get started. So, I use an example later. Maybe I can pull that up now. Hold on. Yes, okay, so. Let's try. Here's an example. And you have your slide in front of you on the handout, so those questions or phrases to get started. So, what would your personal message be? And again, it's personal, so you might feel very differently about the scenario I present to you